foreign policy and all politics is cynical and hypocritical. Let's make no bones about it. Okay, if there was no cynicism and hypocrisy in politics and foreign policy, you wouldn't have diplomacy and you would not have politics at all. The Americans are hypocritical like everybody else, and they do it with a lot of chutzpah. Uh, they don't really care what anybody thinks about it.
Well, to talk about that high profile visit to the White House, I am joined on Global Pulse tonight by Sushant Sareen. He's Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Welcome back to Global Pulse. Great to have you with us, Sushant Sareen. Let me begin by asking you, is Trump making Al Qaeda great again? That's one of the many questions being asked on social media today. The other is, can yesterday's terrorist overnight become today's ally? Is that the message of a deeply cynical foreign policy that the United States is sending out to the rest of the world?
Neha, all foreign policy and all politics is cynical and hypocritical. Let's make no bones about it. Okay, if there was no cynicism and hypocrisy in politics and foreign policy, you wouldn't have diplomacy and you would not have politics at all. We're barking up the wrong tree when we start pointing that out. Secondly, yes, the Americans are hypocritical like everybody else, and they do it with a lot of chutzpah. Uh, they don't really care what anybody thinks about it, and that's the way American foreign policy has always been done. Just take the case of terrorism, for example. uh, when as long as that terrorism was affecting other countries and was serving the United States purpose, after all, it is the same characters who the US was using against the Soviet Union and Afghanistan, who then turned their guns against the United States. So, as long as they were targeting the erstwhile Soviet Union, and they were targeting India, for example, in Kashmir, for almost 10, 12 years, before the Americans woke up to what terrorism is. Uh, it was only after 9/11 that the Americans started calling it terrorism. Otherwise, they were pretty blasé about it. Yes, it affected them once in a while in Lebanon or some other hotspot of Middle East. And if it affected them, it became terrorism. Otherwise, it was kosher. So there is that particular aspect of the US foreign policy. But I think in the Sharaa case, it becomes extremely interesting. Number one, Trump, I don't know how much history and politics and geopolitics he knows, he understands, whether he's all there mentally. But the fact of the matter is, Syria was a very peaceful place. Yes, it had a dictatorship, which could be very cruel and very brutal. Uh, but Syria was a very peaceful place until 2011. It was the Americans and the rest of the West when they started destabilizing Syria, uh, under the label of Arab Spring, that all hell broke loose, and that very tightly controlled society just imploded. The same thing we saw in Iraq, the same thing we've seen in Libya, the same thing we've seen many other parts of the Arab world or the Muslim world. So, okay, fine. Now come back to Shara. He Look, if Shara is ready to renounce and denounce his ideology, which gave rise to his movement and all the stuff that he did, yes, he should be welcomed back. Why not? And that would be a remarkable transformation of a character who was an avowed Islamist, jihadist, who now has come to the mainstream and who's willing to live in peace with the rest of the world. And Syria, if it's ready to play a role in bringing peace in the Middle East, which means giving up, the kind of policies that the Assad regime followed against Israel, trying to form some kind of an axis against Israel to destroy it, to eliminate it. Yes, why not? Certainly welcome him. But is Shara willing to renounce and denounce his ideology? I don't think we have any evidence of that, except for the fact that he now wears a very a very smart suit. Other than that, please tell me how and what else has he changed? So I think there are going to be serious questions on that. And then, of course, will be the conspiracy theorists who will claim that, this whole thing, Shara was to start with a CIA agent. And like I said, this is a conspiracy theory, but I'm sure a lot of people will start finding it plausible that he was a CIA guy. And once they had toppled the regime of Assad, this guy very smartly and quite brilliantly, I should say, made that transformation from being a jihadist to being a centrist, and somebody who's willing to live in peace with the rest of the world. Now, if that is indeed the case, then yes, kudos to the CIA for having pulled off something like this. But if that's not the case, then I think we should be extremely careful of the kind of guys we are now sanctifying, and we are trying to make them acceptable, because who knows when he turns around and starts biting you. He could be one of those snakes which the Americans are keeping in their backyard, and it's very easy for the Americans to tell others, don't keep snakes in your backyard, but when have the Americans not kept snakes in their own backyards?
Absolutely. American history is littered with instances of hypocrisy, and we'll come to those, in just a moment. But talking about Ahmed Al Sharaa, the moment, you earlier talked about Donald Trump's understanding or lack of it of foreign policy. I think understanding foreign policy or any serious issue for that matter is something that Trump has never been accused of. But specifically talking about this instance, this isn't just any man or any terror organization that we're talking about. This is Al Qaeda, the organization that the United States told us carried out 9/11, the biggest terror attack on American soil ever. For Trump to today rehabilitate a man who has been associated with that terror organization and roll out the red carpet, do you not believe that this is going to be a hard sell at home even for Trump, with many even in his MAGA base actually pretty outraged?
Maybe in the MAGA base, but look, I think a lot of people in the MAGA base would be cultists, Trump cultists. So no matter what Trump does, they'll find some redeeming feature in that and continue to back him. But look at it another way. Let me flip this question around. Let's see what happened in New York, the city which was the target of 9/11, where the maximum casualties took place. They've elected a guy as mayor who is quite unapologetic about being a Hamas supporter, who uses anti-Zionism as a kind of a dog whistle against Israel, who is basically, I would call a Jinnah type Islamist, and he has been given respectability by people in New York. So if somebody like him can become the mayor of New York, what's the big deal in Trump, giving respectability to a former Al Qaeda guy, and getting him over into White House? Incidentally, the White House has also invited people like Jalaluddin Haqqani, if I'm not mistaken, and some of the others who later on, uh, picked up arms against America and became part of the Taliban movement. So, like I said, the Americans have been doing it in the past, and Ronald Reagan, when he was hobnobbing with those guys, that did not reduce his popularity. So, I suppose this is what international diplomacy and politics is all about. Uh, and to that extent, I can understand it. Look, again, like I said, uh, if this is part of a well thought out, well structured, well strategized uh, policy to uh, uh, to defang some of these Islamist jihadist terror groups and bring them onto the mainstream, and make them acceptable, provided they do not toe the line they were towing earlier, I think that would be a good thing. But I am extremely skeptical whether this has been well thought out. Number one, and even if it has been well thought out, whether the snake will shed its skin, or the leopard will change its spot, or the tiger change its stripes, uh, I don't think that's going to happen. So I suppose we have to look at it in that context, and wait and see how this plays out. Uh, of course, from an Israeli point of view, I'm sure they would prefer somebody like a Shara who does not want to pick up a fight with them. The fact that Shara, given his ideology, is unlikely to play the kind of role that Assad played in hobnobbing with Iran and Israel's insecurities, that Iran was virtually on their border, uh, courtesy Syria. All of that, in a sense, gives some of the players some degree of comfort insofar as that region is concerned. Uh, but like I said, you have to understand that at the end of the day, this whole jihadist Islamist thing is an ideological fight. And are you fighting this ideological fight? And on that, I'm not entirely convinced.
We don't know really if Al Sharaa has really turned over a new leaf. And with Trump, everything is so transactional. You don't really know where he's coming from. Talking about American hypocrisy that we've seen throughout history, let's talk, Sushant, a little bit about what we've seen just this year. In the wake of the Pahalgam terror attack in India and Operation Sindoor, you had Donald Trump, the US president, going out of his way to woo terror state Pakistan and its army chief, who promoted himself to field marshal and then to chief of defense forces. God knows what he wants to be next, probably president of Pakistan. A lot of talk about how a quiet coup is taking place in Pakistan as we speak. The way Trump has sort of fated a figure like Asim Munir, who clearly has been the architect of Pahalgam and multiple other such instances. What message really does that send out, not just to India, but to the rest of the world?
Look, one, I think Asim Munir is not trying to carry out a coup. That coup is already done. You have, somebody like a Shahbaz Sharif, a boot polisher, as prime minister, who has no personality of his own. And you have that entire parliament, which is a bunch of unelected people who were made to win elections through a rigging, and who will continue to boot polish the forge. So forget about Pakistan. That's a different ballgame altogether. Uh, but I think the message which Trump is sending out is a pretty simple one, and it's not a very complicated message. That as long as you continue to praise him, give his family whatever goodies you can give to them, whatever bribes you can give to them in the form of business opportunities, as long as you continue to do things which he wants you to do insofar as economic relationships and other things are concerned, you can carry out whatever massacre you want to carry out in your own countries. He doesn't give a damn, unless of course it starts affecting his own constituency. For example, if something happens in Nigeria, and there is some violence against some Christians, and those Christians have contacts with people in the Bible Belt which votes for Trump, then he is willing to send an army into Nigeria to bomb the hell out of them. If something happens in South Africa, where the whites feel they are being threatened, and white nationalists, which is the core constituency of Trump, starts getting agitated about it, Trump will take action against South Africa. Otherwise, he doesn't give a damn. If Muslims are killing some Muslims in Sudan or some other place, there are massacres happening. How much did you hear Trump talk about these reports of massacres taking place in Sudan, for example? How much have you heard Trump being bothered about some of the other hotspots where egregious violations of human rights are taking place, including in Pakistan, where university students are being picked up by the Pakistani army fellows and being killed in cold blood. People have been disappeared for decades now. There are death squad members who are members of government now. The chief minister of Balochistan was running a death squad. His best friend is a guy by the name of Shafiq Mengal, who is very closely involved with the ISIS. And Trump says, I want to fight ISIS. Pakistan will fight ISIS. So either Trump and the CIA and everybody else have taken leave of their senses, or they want to make ISIS great again. Who knows?
Yeah.
They may think that maybe ISIS will give them some rare earth minerals, mining rights, some cryptocurrency rights to, Trump's son's things. Maybe they'll give them some hotel property somewhere, and that's okay. Then ISIS can continue doing what ISIS was doing. How does it matter to Trump? ISIS was mostly killing Muslims, wasn't it? Uh, so I suppose, it shows you uh, this kind of corruption that has taken over in Washington, the kind of people who are ruling the roost in Washington, and of course that entire image that people had about the US being an upholder of an international order. I think that's going. That's already gone. He has alienated many of America's allies. Some people are still harboring hopes, including some in India, that okay, it's only Trump. Maybe 2 years from now, 3 years from now, things will turn around when things return to normal. I don't think so. It's going to return to normal. I think uh, Trump has pushed America over the edge, and it's now on that very steep slide. I don't know how they're going to recover from this after having what they have done, disrupted the international trading system, international order, alienated friends and allies, everybody. But I suppose this is how Rome also collapsed one day.
And this really does seem to be Donald Trump's single biggest accomplishment, I think, disrupting the international order. Given that
Going to be,
it is,
no,
and
this is actually going to be his legacy.
this will be his legacy. But again, this is a man who doesn't care about anything at all. And we're talking about Trump wooing an Al Sharaa or an Asim Munir today, but we've also seen how the Taliban and Osama bin Laden have been America's Frankenstein monsters. And then that so-called war on terror. Many today wonder, wasn't that all a big sham, considering the WMDs, for instance, were never found in Iraq?
No, no, the Iraq thing was that was a complete sham. I think that was proven at that point of time. They manufactured a conspiracy. It is something again the Americans have been infamous for. They did that against Cuba in the past, Spain, in fact, in Cuba. These false flag attacks, or uh, this whole thing about uh, you know uh, create this whole image that somebody has something which the Americans cannot allow and then go after it, which is exactly what they did in Iraq. Of course, when it came to Afghanistan, there was a reason for them to do what they did, but again, did they think that through, or was it pure anger which got the better of them? That was one part of the problem. The second part of the problem was that they actually became alive to what was happening. Please remember, when the Taliban first took over power in 96, the Americans at that point of time, and you had a much more normal American administration at that point of time, which is Bill Clinton and others, were very interested in doing business with the Taliban. They were trying to get these oil pipelines through and all kinds of other things through, as far as Afghanistan is concerned. American oil giants were getting involved into that. It was only subsequently when there was noises made about the treatment of women and stuff like that, that the Americans started pulling away from the Taliban. Otherwise, the Americans had absolutely no problem. They were
Yeah,
willing to live with the Taliban. They didn't give a damn. Do you
yeah.
think Afghan women make a difference to American calculation? No, they don't. But once they decided that they want to pick up beef with the Taliban, then Afghan women certainly was the reason. Otherwise, it
Yeah.
was not. They were ready to do business.
Absolutely. Final question,
Yeah,
Sushant
I got
Sareen, before. Sorry, go ahead.
to rush. I have a lot of calls, so
Oh,
please,
okay.
you'll have to excuse me. I'm really sorry.
Okay, no worries, no worries. We leave it at that. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me.